We are more connected than ever, yet so many of us fear being alone with our own thoughts. In a world of constant noise, silence feels like a punishment. But the ancient Stoics saw it as the ultimate training ground. Seneca wrote, "You must retreat into yourself as often as you can." This video will give you the philosophical tools to transform solitude from a source of dread into your greatest strength. We will explore edgy, true stories from the precipice of isolation and uncover the Stoic principles that unlock its hidden power. How did a shipwrecked sailor find purpose in despair? What secret does a mountaintop reveal about our daily worries? Solitude is not emptiness. It is a profound space for self-discovery. What is the one thing you believe you could never face alone? The first step in embracing solitude is building an unshakable inner fortress. The ancient Stoics called this the inner citadel, a mental space you construct within yourself, a sanctuary of peace and self-reliance that no external chaos can breach. This is not about physical walls, but about training your mind. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who ruled one of history's most powerful empires, wrote his private meditations not in a peaceful garden, but from the front lines of brutal military campaigns. Amidst the chaos of war, he retreated into his own mind to find stillness. He wrote, "Nowhere can a person find a more peaceful and untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He was building his citadel in real time. Consider a modern professional, completely burned out by the constant demands of emails and meetings. They decide to spend a weekend at a silent retreat, with no phone and no distractions. The first few hours are agonizing, a torrent of anxious thoughts. But as the silence deepens, the mental noise begins to settle. In that quiet space, they are not building something new so much as they are uncovering what was always there, a core of calm judgment and purpose that had been buried under a mountain of external opinions and urgent demands. They return not just rested, but recentered, with a newfound ability to navigate office politics and personal stress from a place of inner strength. When was the last time you truly listened to your own thoughts without the noise of a podcast, a screen, or another person's voice filling the silence? That simple act of listening is the first brick laid in the foundation of your own inner citadel. What if being cast out alone was not a curse, but a gift? This is the heart of the Stoic principle known as Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. It is the radical acceptance of everything that happens to you, not with passive resignation, but with an active, welcoming spirit. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who was born a slave, laid the foundation for this when he said, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to, rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens, and you will be happy." He is telling us that our suffering does not come from the events themselves, but from our resistance to them. Now picture a sailor thrown overboard in a violent storm. The ship is gone, the crew is lost, and he is left utterly alone, adrift in the vast, indifferent ocean. The immediate reality is one of terror and despair. But if he survives those first crushing hours, a shift can occur. He cannot change his circumstance. He cannot wish the ship back. His only path to survival, and ultimately to meaning, is to embrace his new, stark reality. He begins to love the fate that placed him here. He finds a profound gratitude for the single piece of driftwood that keeps him afloat. He sees the beauty in the stars that guide him at night. His isolation becomes his monastery, a forced retreat where he discovers a will to live he never knew he possessed. His story is not about the tragedy of the shipwreck, but about the transformation that followed it. The wilderness, whether an actual ocean or a period of deep personal loneliness, forces this perspective upon us. Can you identify a difficult, lonely period in your life that ultimately shaped you for the better? That moment, as painful as it was, held within it the seed of Amor Fati. Solitude strips away the opinions of others, forcing us to see things as they are. This is the essence of the Stoic discipline of perception, a practice of judging events based solely on their true nature, not on the layers of fear or social expectation we drape over them. In the noise of daily life, our perceptions are clouded by what we think we should feel, or by the reactions we see in everyone else. A difficult email is not just a piece of text, it becomes a public rejection. A quiet evening is not just empty time, it becomes a sign of loneliness, but silence acts as a filter. It removes the audience, and without an audience, the performance stops. You are left with the raw, unadorned event itself. Marcus Aurelius advised himself, remove the judgment, and you have removed the thought, I am hurt. Remove the thought, I am hurt, and the hurt itself is removed. He was not ignoring pain, he was meticulously cleaning the lens through which he saw it. Consider an inventor working for months in a secluded garage. Away from the critiques of peers and the fickle trends of the market, they are not distracted by what others think is possible. Their perception of a problem becomes crystal clear, focused only on the materials, the physics, the true challenge at hand. It is in this uncluttered mental space that a breakthrough often occurs, not in a crowded, noisy conference room. The worry that seemed so large and public, the fear of failure that felt so defining, simply dissolves when viewed under the quiet, steady light of your own mind. What is one common worry that dissolves when you view it in the quiet of your own mind? The Roman philosopher Musonius Rufus taught that comfort is a trap. He argued we should regularly practice hardship, saying that just as an athlete trains for competition, we must train for life by willingly embracing difficulty. The ancient cynics took this even further, living in poverty by choice to prove that happiness needs nothing external. This is the philosophy of voluntary discomfort, a powerful tool for building resilience. By periodically stepping away from our usual comforts, we not only strengthen our ability to endure future hardships, we also rediscover a profound appreciation for the simple blessings we normally take for granted. Solitude is one of the most potent forms of this training. Choosing to be alone, truly alone without digital pacifiers, is a modern act of cynic courage. It forces a confrontation with the self that comfortable distractions constantly help us avoid. Think of someone who decides to go on a solo camping trip. They leave behind their soft bed, their climate-controlled home, and their constant connection to other people. The first night is unsettling. Every crack of a twig in the dark is amplified. The silence feels heavy, but as the days pass, a shift occurs. They begin to notice the subtle warmth of the morning sun, the intricate pattern of a leaf, the clear, cold taste of water from a stream. Their perception sharpens. The absence of convenience makes them more capable and more present. They are not just camping, they are actively dismantling their dependence on external comforts and rebuilding their inner self-reliance. This practice proves a powerful truth that we already possess everything we need to be content. What comfort could you voluntarily give up for a single day to discover your own hidden strength? A day without your smartphone, perhaps, or a morning without that first hot coffee. The small discomfort you choose today becomes the unshakable resilience you can rely on tomorrow. Standing on a lonely peak, looking down on the world below, your daily life shrinks to a tiny, silent speck. This is not just a beautiful view, it is the essence of a powerful Stoic exercise known as the view from above. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly, urging himself to look down from on high and see the vastness of the world, the countless cities and people, and the brief, fleeting span of a single human life. He wrote, "Keep this constantly in mind, that all of this has happened before and will happen again, the same plot from beginning to end. From this elevated vantage point, the dramas that consume us lose their weight." That argument with a coworker, that social embarrassment, the relentless chase for status, all of it recedes into the grand, quiet tapestry of existence. Physical solitude is the perfect catalyst for this mental shift. When you are truly alone with no one to perform for, the walls of your personal theater come down and you can finally see the whole stage. Consider the profound perspective of an astronaut, completely isolated in the void, gazing back at our small, blue planet. From that unimaginable distance, national borders vanish, conflicts seem absurdly small, and the only thing that matters is the fragile, shared home floating in the darkness. Their isolation grants them not loneliness, but a unifying vision of what truly is. The view from above meditation asks you to create this same shift in perspective from wherever you are. It invites you to rise above the clutter of the immediate and see your life within its true, vast context. From this broader perspective, what daily drama of yours suddenly seems insignificant? In the quiet, we hear the most important reminder of all: our time is limited. This is the heart of the Stoic practice Memento Mori, a Latin phrase meaning remember you must die. Far from being a morbid fixation, this is a tool for creating intense focus and gratitude. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." He saw that we squander our days, postponing our true lives as if we had an eternity to live. Solitude provides the one space quiet enough to hold this thought without the world's frantic distractions rushing in to silence it. When you are alone, the reality of your finite time becomes not a threat but a clarifying force. It asks the most direct question possible: what are you doing with the precious days you have left? Picture a person who receives a serious diagnosis and must face the ensuing treatments and uncertainty largely alone. In that profound isolation, stripped of the usual social chatter and performative concerns, they are forced to confront what truly matters. The trivial anxieties that once consumed them, the need for approval, the fear of saying the wrong thing, all of it falls away like dead weight. What remains is a stark, powerful clarity. They might realize that mending a broken relationship is more urgent than a promotion, or that a quiet afternoon with a good book is more valuable than a night of forced socialization. Their solitude becomes the crucible where a more authentic, purposeful life is forged. This is the ultimate gift of Memento Mori. It does not ask you to live in fear of the end, but to live in reverence for the present. If you knew you had 1 year left, what would you immediately stop caring about others' opinions on? How much of your identity is shaped by the crowd? From the brands we buy to the opinions we voice, so much of who we are is a reflection of the tribe we belong to. Solitude offers the rarest of opportunities, a chance to step outside that current and ask who you would be if no one was watching. The Stoics called this cognitive detachment, the practice of separating your inner self-worth from the external chase for validation. It is a skill forged in the quiet, away from the noise of the herd. The former slave Epictetus, who knew a thing or two about having his external status stripped away, drew a simple, powerful line. He said, "Some things are within our control and some things are not. Our opinions, our desires, our character, these are ours to command. The opinions of others, our reputation, our wealth, these are not." When you internalize this division, the need to follow the crowd begins to loosen its grip. Think of a highly successful corporate lawyer, someone who has built their entire identity on winning cases and climbing the professional ladder. The validation from partners and the respect of rivals is their oxygen. Then they step away. They leave the high-profile career for a quieter, more solitary life, perhaps writing or working with their hands. At first, the silence is deafening. Without the daily accolades and the adversarial thrill, they feel untethered, as if their very self is dissolving. But in that solitude, they begin to rebuild. They discover that their worth was never in the legal briefs or the corner office. It was in their capacity for focus, their resilience, their integrity. These were the qualities they always possessed, but the crowd's applause had drowned out their true value. Their new life is not a rejection of success, but a redefinition of it, built on a foundation they control. This is the power of cognitive detachment. It allows you to carry your self-worth within you like an internal compass, so you are no longer blown off course by every shifting social wind. What belief do you hold because everyone else does, not because you have truly examined it for yourself? Happiness begins to feel less like an acquisition and more like a subtraction. Solitude teaches us that we need very little to be happy because it systematically removes everything non-essential until only the core remains. This is the bedrock of Stoic contentment, a state not of having what you want, but of wanting what you already have. It is a deep-seated recognition that peace comes from virtue and the fulfillment of basic needs, not from an ever-growing list of desires. The philosopher Epictetus, who owned almost nothing, framed it with brutal clarity. He said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." He was not praising poverty, but pointing to the freedom that comes when you stop chasing the next thing. Imagine a modern hermit not as a figure of misery, but as a person who has made a conscious choice. They live in a small cabin, perhaps with a bed, a stove, and a shelf of books. Their days are not filled with the frantic energy of consumption or social performance. Instead, they find a profound richness in the rhythm of the seasons, the taste of a simple meal, the quiet satisfaction of a mind at peace with itself. Their story is not about what they lack, but about the immense space they have created by letting go. In the silence, they have discovered that the noise of wanting was the very thing blocking their access to joy. This minimalist existence is not for everyone, but its lesson is universal. When you sit alone without the constant buzz of advertisements and social comparisons, your wants begin to quiet down. You realize that the anxiety to be more, to have more, to do more, is a ghost that fades in the direct light of your own awareness. Your core happiness, it turns out, was never stored in your possessions or your calendar. It was waiting patiently in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. What single possession or social commitment could you lose today without it diminishing your core happiness in the slightest? Use your alone time to rehearse adversity. This is the essence of the Stoic practice known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. It is not an exercise in pessimism, but a powerful tool for mental inoculation. By calmly envisioning potential challenges and losses in advance, you strip them of their power to shock and destabilize you when they arrive. Seneca put it plainly when he wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." Solitude provides the perfect, undisturbed environment for this rehearsal. Away from the pressures and reactions of others, you can confront difficult possibilities with a clear and rational mind. Consider a great strategist or a CEO who must often retreat to a quiet room to think through every conceivable failure. They are not inviting disaster, they are building a fortress of composure around it. They ask themselves, what if our main supplier goes out of business? What if a key team member resigns? By walking through these scenarios in the safety of their own mind, they develop contingency plans and, more importantly, they fortify their own emotional resilience. The initial sting of fear is neutralized because the event is no longer a surprise. It becomes a situation to be managed, not a catastrophe to be feared. This practice transforms anxiety into preparedness. What potential future hardship can you mentally prepare for right now? It could be a difficult conversation you have been avoiding, a financial setback, or a professional rejection. In the quiet of your own thoughts, rehearse facing it with courage and calm. By doing so, you are not summoning trouble, you are disarming it. When you are alone, the line between what you can and cannot control becomes starkly clear. The constant noise of society often blurs this boundary, making us feel responsible for everything from the weather to other people's feelings. But solitude acts like a sharp blade, cutting away the illusion of external command and leaving only the raw truth of your own agency. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who began his life in chains, laid out this fundamental principle with unforgettable clarity. He said, "Some things are within our power while others are not." Within our power are opinion, aim, desire, and in a word, whatever is our own action. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, and in a word, whatever is not our own action. This is the core of the dichotomy of control. Your thoughts, your intentions, your efforts, these are your kingdom. Everything else is foreign soil. Solitude forces you to live within your own borders, to stop wasting energy on territories you can never rule. Picture a researcher stationed alone for months in a remote Arctic outpost. A brutal storm arrives, trapping them inside for weeks, completely cutting off any communication with the outside world. They cannot control the weather, they cannot speed up time. They have no power over the resupply plane grounded thousands of miles away. Their entire world shrinks to the four walls of their shelter. In that void, the only thing left to control is their response. They can choose to descend into panic, raging against the ice and wind, or they can choose to focus on what is theirs to command. They can maintain their routines, log their observations with meticulous care, and use the enforced stillness to read, to think, to write. Their survival and their sanity hinge entirely on this single, focused choice. Their story is a powerful testament to the freedom found not in controlling your circumstances, but in mastering your reaction to them. In your current challenges, what is one thing you are trying to control that is entirely outside your power? The answer to that question, accepted fully, is the first step toward reclaiming your mental energy and directing it where it can actually make a difference. Your journal is the one friend who always tells the truth. It listens without judgment and reflects your thoughts back to you with unwavering honesty. This practice of writing is far more than just keeping a diary. It is a structured form of productive solitude, a daily dialogue with your deepest self. The most famous example in history is the private journal of Marcus Aurelius, which we now call his Meditations. He was not writing for an audience or for publication. He was writing to remind himself of his own principles, to examine his actions, and to coach his own mind through the immense pressures of ruling an empire. His journal was his sacred space for self-correction and reinforcement, a tool for holding himself accountable to his Stoic ideals. Think of a modern executive overwhelmed by a constant stream of decisions and interpersonal conflicts. They commit to writing 3 morning pages each day, a simple stream of consciousness poured onto paper before checking their phone or email. In that quiet space, they are not performing for their team or their board. They can untangle a complex problem, acknowledge a private fear about an upcoming merger, or simply vent frustration without consequence. The act of writing forces vague anxieties to take a concrete shape. That nagging worry about a colleague's comment transforms on the page into a specific, manageable issue that can be addressed with a direct conversation. The journal does not solve the problem, it clarifies it, stripping away the emotional static and revealing the core signal. Your own mind becomes a clearer, calmer place when you give your thoughts a place to land outside of yourself. Try writing down one nagging thought tonight. See what it truly looks like when it is no longer just a ghost in your mind, but a simple set of words on a paper. You might be surprised by how much power it loses once you have given it a form. Walk into solitude with a plan, but hold it lightly. This is the wisdom of the Stoic reserve clause, a principle that balances fierce effort with serene acceptance. You commit to a goal with your entire being, you pour your energy into the work, yet you simultaneously hold the outcome with an open hand. Seneca captured this beautifully when he advised, "Let all your efforts be directed to something, let it keep that end in view." It's not that your efforts might not reach their goal, but that they might be deflected. Your intention is your anchor, not the shifting winds of result. This mindset becomes your most vital companion when you are working alone, without a team to share the burden or an audience to offer immediate feedback. Picture a novelist toiling for years on a manuscript in a quiet room. They write with passion and discipline, believing in the story they are telling. Yet they also practice the reserve clause. They understand that the book may never find a publisher, or that it might be met with silence upon its release. This acceptance is not a lack of ambition, it is a profound form of emotional freedom. It allows them to write for the sake of the art itself, for the clarity and purpose the process brings to their own life, regardless of the external reception. Their solitude becomes a sanctuary for pure effort, insulated from the corrosive fear of failure. What goal are you currently so attached to that the thought of it failing causes you anxiety? Can you find the courage to pursue it with all your heart while cultivating a quiet indifference to the final result? In deep solitude, you can feel your connection to the entire universe. The ancient Stoics called this sympatheia, the profound understanding that everything in existence is woven together into a single, rational, and living whole. Marcus Aurelius described it as the cosmic city, writing, "The poet says, 'Dear city of Cecrops,' and will you not say, 'Dear city of Zeus?'" He was reminding himself that his true citizenship was not to Rome, but to the entire cosmos, a universe governed by a shared divine reason. This feeling of interconnection often remains hidden in the crowded noise of daily life, but solitude has a way of pulling back the curtain. When you are truly alone, the artificial boundaries between you and the world begin to dissolve. Picture that lone sailor again, adrift on the open ocean. With no land in sight for weeks, his small boat becomes his entire world. He begins to notice patterns he never saw before. The migration of birds correlates with a shift in the wind. The phases of the moon pull gently on the tides that carry him. He is not a separate entity fighting against the sea, but a single, conscious part of its vast, breathing system. His survival depends on his ability to listen and harmonize with this interconnected web. Or consider an astronomer spending a long, cold night alone with a telescope. As they gaze into the deep field, tracing the light from galaxies millions of years old, their own personal worries shrink to an almost invisible scale. Yet they do not feel erased. Instead, they feel a part of something magnificent. They are made of the same stardust as those swirling giants, observing itself across the eons. This is the heart of sympatheia, a recognition that your individual existence, however small, is a necessary thread in an immense and beautiful tapestry. In a moment of quiet, can you sense your small but integral part in a vast, rational whole? The world constantly pushes us toward quick reactions, but Stoicism offers a different path, one of considered responses born from deep stillness. In the space between an event and your reaction lies your power, a space that solitude carves out and expands. The Stoic teacher Epictetus gave us the fundamental tool for this. He said, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments about events. An insult, a setback, a piece of bad news, these are just impressions. They have no power to disturb you until you grant it with your own rushed judgment. Solitude is the training ground where you learn to pause, to examine that initial impression before you let it dictate your behavior." Think of a senior leader facing a corporate crisis, perhaps a sudden public relations disaster. The phones are ringing, the team is panicked, and the pressure to issue an immediate defensive statement is immense. Instead of reacting from that place of collective fear, this leader does something counterintuitive. They step away, closing their office door for just 15 minutes of absolute solitude. In that quiet, they are not ignoring the problem. They are creating the mental space to separate the event itself from the turbulent emotions surrounding it. They can ask the Stoic questions: what is within my control here? What would a virtuous response look like? One guided by wisdom and courage rather than panic. When they emerge, their directive is not a reactive, emotional blast, but a measured, principled plan of action. That pause, that deliberate stillness, transforms a potential disaster into an opportunity for demonstrated integrity. Recall your own recent emotional reaction. Perhaps a sharp email you sent in anger or a harsh word spoken in frustration. Now imagine if you had taken just 5 minutes of true solitude first. How might that quiet space have changed the entire course of your response, allowing a better version of you to take the lead? Sitting alone, you watch leaves fall and seasons change, a quiet lesson in impermanence unfolding right before your eyes. This constant flow is not something to mourn, but the fundamental nature of existence itself, a truth that solitude makes palpable. Marcus Aurelius meditated on this very river of time, writing, "Time is a river of passing events, and strong is its current." He was not describing a loss, but a reality to be embraced. When you are by yourself, removed from the human-made illusion of permanence, you can feel this current in your bones. The world is not a fixed photograph, but a living, breathing process of transformation. A single afternoon spent sitting by a river, completely alone, can teach you more about this than a lifetime of philosophy books. You watch the water flow past, never the same stream twice. You see a leaf carried on the current, spinning and dancing before it vanishes from view. The rock on the bank seems solid, but even it is being slowly worn smooth by the endless, gentle caress of the water. You are not separate from this flow, you are a part of it. Your thoughts, your circumstances, your very body are all in a state of gentle, continuous change. Solitude allows you to witness this without panic, to sit with the truth that everything you have and everything you are is on loan from this great river of existence. What are you desperately clinging to that you know, deep down, is already changing or fading? It could be a relationship, a version of yourself, a career, or a possession. That tightness in your chest, that resistance, is the pain of fighting the current. The Stoic practice is to loosen your grip, to open your hands and let the river flow through them, trusting that its movement is not a theft, but a natural and necessary part of life. Wisdom is seeing the world clearly, and solitude is the lens. The Stoics defined wisdom, or phronses, not as a collection of facts, but as the practical ability to navigate life with clarity and sound judgment. It is the skill of distinguishing what is truly important from the endless noise of trivialities. This kind of understanding cannot be rushed or borrowed from others. It must be cultivated in the quiet spaces you create for yourself. Seneca wrote passionately about the need for such retreat, stating, "Leisure without study is death, a tomb for the living." He saw solitude not as idleness, but as the most fertile ground for the active work of the mind, where study and reflection merge into genuine insight. When you remove the social distractions, the need to perform, and the constant intake of other people's opinions, your own perception sharpens. You begin to see the patterns of your own life, the causes of your anxieties, and the pathways to your goals with a new and startling lucidity. Consider the story of a scientist on the verge of a major discovery, yet stuck for months on a single, intractable problem. The data is all there, but the solution remains hidden in a fog of overthinking and committee debates. They finally retreat to an isolated cabin with no colleagues and no internet. For days, they walk through the silent woods, their mind free from the pressure to produce an immediate answer. And in that emptiness, the pieces suddenly fall into place. The breakthrough arrives not as a loud announcement, but as a quiet, inevitable clarity, a connection that was always present but impossible to hear over the din of collective thought. Their isolation did not give them new information. It gave them the silent space necessary to understand the information they already possessed. This is the alchemy of solitude, transforming raw knowledge into practical wisdom. What is one truth you have come to understand only when you were by yourself? Loneliness is the pain of being alone, but self-friendship is the power it unlocks. This crucial distinction lies at the heart of transforming solitude from a state of lack into a wellspring of strength. The Stoics argued that before you can be a true friend to anyone else, you must first learn to be a friend to yourself. Seneca explored this deeply in his letters, writing that a person who is a friend to themselves is a friend to all. He was not describing a lonely existence, but a rich inner companionship built on self-respect, honest dialogue, and unwavering support. This self-friendship is not born in a crowd. It is forged in the quiet moments you intentionally spend with your own mind. Think of someone who, after a painful breakup or a move to a new city, finds themselves profoundly lonely. The silence of their apartment feels oppressive, a constant reminder of what is missing. For weeks, they try to fill the void with frantic social plans or endless scrolling, only to feel more hollow. Then they make a different choice. They decide to treat their own company as they would a dear friend's. They cook themselves a nourishing meal. They take a long walk without a podcast to distract them. They sit with their feelings of sadness without judgment. Slowly, the emptiness begins to fill with a new presence, their own. They start to discover their own curiosities, their own sense of humor, their own resilience. Their loneliness did not vanish. It was transmuted into a profound and peaceful connection with the person they had been neglecting all along. This is the alchemy of self-friendship. It asks you to extend to yourself the same compassion and understanding you so freely offer to others. If you were your own friend, what gentle, compassionate advice would you give yourself today? In your quiet moments, dare to imagine losing what you love. This is the essence of the Stoic practice known as negative visualization, a deliberate exercise in premeditating loss not to invite sorrow, but to cultivate a profound and unshakable gratitude. Solitude provides the only emotional container strong enough for this practice, a space where you can explore the edges of loss without being overwhelmed by the fear of it. Seneca advised us to do precisely this, writing, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand, and he who has anticipated the coming of evils takes away their power when they arrive." He was not teaching pessimism, but a form of emotional vaccination. By willingly contemplating the absence of what we cherish, we inoculate ourselves against the shock of potential future loss, and more importantly, we awaken to the vibrant, precious reality of what we have right now. Picture someone on a long, solitary walk through a quiet forest. The path is empty, the only sound is the crunch of leaves underfoot. In this undisturbed mental space, they allow themselves a difficult thought. They imagine returning home to find their partner gone, the house silent and empty, their shared life vanished. They do not shy away from the visceral wave of grief that follows. They sit with the hollow feeling, allowing it to wash over them completely. For a few minutes, they live in a world without that person's laughter, without their comforting presence. Then, as they round the final bend and see their home in the distance, the illusion breaks. The imagined loss recedes, and in its place surges an overwhelming, electric gratitude. The sight of a light in the window is no longer mundane, it is a miracle. The ordinary love they left behind an hour ago has been transformed, through this mental rehearsal, into something extraordinary and achingly beautiful. This is the alchemy of negative visualization. It turns the lead of potential loss into the gold of present moment appreciation. What person or possession can you mentally lose today to appreciate it more fully? Courage is not the absence of fear, but the judgment that something else is more important than fear, a verdict often reached in the profound silence of our own minds. This is the heart of Stoic courage, or Andrea, a strength forged not on a noisy battlefield, but in the quiet, solitary confrontation with our deepest uncertainties. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who understood the nature of true bravery, framed it with his characteristic clarity. He said, "It is not death or pain that is to be feared, but the fear of pain or death." He points us toward the real adversary, the dread that grows in the dark spaces of our imagination when we are left alone with our thoughts. Solitude is the arena where we must finally face that phantom, to sit with it until we understand its true, diminished size. History offers a striking example in the figure of Nelson Mandela. His long years of imprisonment were a forced and brutal solitude, a time of immense inner struggle. In that confined space, cut off from the world, he was not free from fear or doubt. Instead, he was given the stark opportunity to stare them down, to weigh them against his unwavering commitment to justice and his people. His courage was not a sudden, fiery outburst, but a quiet, resilient flame that was tempered and hardened in the cold silence of his cell. He emerged not broken by the isolation, but fortified by it, his judgment refined to a razor's edge, his priorities crystal clear. His story reminds us that the most formidable courage is often the one we build for ourselves, with no audience to cheer us on. What is a fear you need to sit with in silence, to truly understand and begin to overcome? The quiet room is your training ground, and the only requirement is the willingness to stay, to listen, and to judge what truly matters. Without an audience, your self-assessment becomes brutally honest. The judgments you make in solitude are not softened by the need to save face or justify your actions to anyone else. This is the fertile ground for the ancient Stoic practice of the nightly review, a quiet ritual of looking back on your day with the impartial eye of a judge assessing their own court. Seneca wrote extensively about this in his letters, urging a daily accounting of the self. He advised, the spirit ought to be brought up for review each day. This is what Socrates was getting at when he said we should not live a life without examination. He was not calling for self-punishment, but for a clear-eyed audit of where your actions aligned with your principles and where they fell short. The goal is not guilt but growth. In the company of others, this review can easily become a performance, a curated story of your day designed to make you look good, even to yourself. But true solitude strips that away. You are left alone with the raw footage of your behavior, with no one to edit it for. Imagine someone on a long solo road trip, driving for hours with only the hum of the engine and their own thoughts for company. As the landscape rolls by, their mind begins to replay a difficult conversation from work. In the moment, they had been defensive, quick to blame a colleague. But here, in the quiet of the car, with no one to perform for, they can finally admit their own role in the misunderstanding. They see their own pride, their own fear of being wrong. This admission is not pleasant, but it is liberating. It is the first necessary step toward genuine change, a step that is almost impossible to take when you are worried about how the confession will sound to someone else. If no one was watching, what habit would you change immediately? The answer that surfaces in your private honesty is the very starting point of your most authentic transformation. The walls of a solitary room can feel like a prison or the boundaries of a limitless inner world. The Stoics discovered a profound truth hidden within this paradox, that genuine freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the power to choose our response to them. It is the liberation found by embracing your circumstances with purpose, rather than exhausting yourself in a futile fight against them. The former slave Epictetus, who understood the nature of cages, both physical and mental, defined this real freedom with stunning precision. He said, "He is free who lives as he wishes, who is subject neither to compulsion, nor hindrance, nor force, whose choices are unhampered, whose desires attain their end, whose aversions do not fall into what they would avoid." He is describing a person whose inner world is so well ordered that external walls become almost irrelevant. Consider the story of a prisoner of war held for years in a tiny, isolated cell. The physical facts of his existence are absolute, a brutal limitation of space, movement, and comfort. He cannot change the four walls, the meager rations, or the silence. At first, his mind rages against this reality, a torment that is worse than any physical hardship. But survival demands a shift. He begins to use the very rigidity of his confinement as a structure for a different kind of life. He creates a daily routine of mental exercise, reciting poetry he memorized as a child, reconstructing complex mathematical theorems in his head, or holding long, imagined conversations with historical figures. The cell, which was once a symbol of his captivity, becomes the silent monastery where he reclaims his mind. His world shrinks in physical terms, yet expands into infinite internal territories. He is not free to leave, yet he becomes, in the most essential way, truly free. His captors control his body, but they have no power over the kingdom of his thoughts. What limitation in your life can you reframe as a structure for your own creative freedom? Is it a demanding job, a financial constraint, or a personal responsibility? These very walls can become the frame for a masterpiece of resilience and purpose, if you choose to see them not as barriers, but as the defining edges of your inner citadel. The first form of justice is being fair to yourself. We often think of justice as something we owe to others, a matter of laws and social contracts. But the Stoics saw the virtue of justice, or dikaiosine, as beginning with an honest and balanced relationship with your own soul. It is about giving yourself what you are rightly due, not in terms of indulgence, but in the fundamental needs of a rational human being: rest for the body, reflection for the mind, and respect for your own limits. Marcus Aurelius directed this inward when he wrote, "Injustice is not always a matter of theft and violence. Sometimes it is found in failing to do what is needed." When you push yourself relentlessly, denying yourself sleep or peace in the pursuit of external validation, you are committing an act of injustice against the one person you are most responsible for, yourself. Solitude provides the quiet courtroom where this case can finally be heard. Without the competing voices of bosses, family, and friends, you can ask the essential question: what am I truly denying myself? Imagine a dedicated nurse whose entire life is spent caring for others. Her schedule is a relentless cycle of double shifts, and her sense of worth is tied directly to her capacity to endure. She feels a constant, low-grade resentment she cannot explain. During a rare week of mandated leave, with no patients to tend to and no shifts to cover, the silence feels alien and uncomfortable. But as the days pass, the quiet begins to speak. She realizes that her relentless drive has been a form of self-betrayal. She has not allowed herself a full night's sleep in months. She has not sat with a book simply for pleasure in years. She has been unjust to her own humanity, treating her body and mind as tools to be used until they break, rather than as a living being worthy of her own care. This solitary recalibration is not selfish, it is the foundation of sustainable strength. By giving herself the rest and reflection she needed, she was not neglecting her duty, she was finally fulfilling the first and most important duty of all. In what way are you being unjust to yourself by not allowing for quiet, restorative time alone? Tranquility is not the absence of noise, but the presence of peace, a state found by deliberately disengaging from the unnecessary. The Stoics called this ataraxia, a serene stability of the soul that remains unshaken by the chaos of external events. It is the calm at the center of the storm, a peace that does not depend on everything going right, but on your inner alignment remaining steady. Seneca wrote powerfully about this, advising, "The mind must be given relaxation, it will rise improved and sharper after a good break. Just as rich fields must not be forced, so unremitted effort leads to a kind of mental barrenness." He saw that constant engagement with the world's demands drains our inner reserves, while strategic solitude refills them. This is not about abandoning your responsibilities, but about creating pockets of intentional disengagement to protect your core peace. Think of a busy parent pulled in a dozen different directions from dawn until dusk. The needs of their children, their partner, their job create a relentless cacophony of demands. Their mind becomes a crowded room with no exit. Then they begin a simple practice. Each day they claim just 10 minutes of absolute solitude, perhaps by waking a little earlier to sit with a cup of tea before the household stirs, or by sitting in their parked car for a few moments after work before walking inside. In that brief, guarded silence, they are not a parent, an employee, or a partner. They are simply a being breathing. They consciously disengage from the mental lists and anticipated requests. They are not solving problems in this time, they are restoring the solver. This small daily retreat becomes their sanctuary, a reset button that allows them to re-engage with their life from a place of patience and presence, rather than from depleted frustration. The tranquility they find does not make the noise disappear, but it turns the volume down to a manageable level. What one external demand can you consciously disengage from this week to create more of this inner peace? It might be the compulsion to immediately answer every text, the habit of scrolling through news feeds first thing in the morning, or the need to have an opinion on every minor event. Your intentional disengagement is not neglect, it is the essential maintenance of your own inner light. The ideal Stoic sage is often depicted in contemplation, alone. This solitary figure is not a hermit hiding from the world, but a person whose inner world is so rich and well-ordered that they carry a state of profound peace with them everywhere. The sage represents the ultimate expression of perfected reason and virtue, qualities that can only be truly refined away from the distorting influence of the crowd. Epictetus described this wise person as one who is sick and yet happy, in peril and yet happy, dying and yet happy, in exile and happy, in disgrace and happy. His point was not that the sage is immune to circumstance, but that their core happiness is built on an unshakable foundation, a citadel of character constructed in solitude. We are not meant to become perfect sages, but to strive toward this ideal in our own practice. using our quiet moments to chip away at our flaws and strengthen our resolve. Think of historical figures like Mahatma Gandhi, who undertook long periods of silence and fasting, or fictional mentors like Yoda from Star Wars, who waited in secluded swamps for a worthy student. Their power did not come from a committee or a crowd, but from a deep, solitary communion with a higher principle. They operated from a place of centered stillness, and their actions in the world were simply an extension of that inner clarity. Their solitude was not an escape, but a source of immense strength. What one quality of the Stoic sage do you feel you could develop best in your own company? Is it their unwavering courage, their profound judgment, or their serene acceptance of fate? That single quality is your starting point, the seed you can nurture the next time you find yourself alone with your thoughts. The world never sleeps, but your mind desperately needs its rest. How do you carve out islands of solitude in this endless ocean of noise? The answer lies not in grand gestures, but in reclaiming the small, stolen moments of your day. Marcus Aurelius himself, while governing an empire, understood this secret. He wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the coast, or in the hills. But this is altogether unphilosophical when you can at any moment retreat into yourself. Your retreat is not a location, it is a decision. It can begin with something as simple as the first sip of your morning coffee. Imagine turning that frantic, scroll-filled minute into a Stoic coffee minute. You hold the warm mug, you feel its heat, you taste the bitterness without distraction. For those 60 seconds, you are not preparing for the day's demands, you are simply present with yourself. This is not a waste of time, it is an investment in your inner citadel. An early morning walk before the neighborhood stirs can become a moving meditation. The rhythm of your steps becomes a mantra, the quiet streets a private sanctuary. Or consider your daily commute, transforming the crowded train or the traffic jam from a source of frustration into a pocket of productive solitude. You put your phone away, you let the world rush by outside the window, and you turn your attention inward. These are not escapes from your life, they are the essential pauses that give your life depth and direction. The goal is not to add another task to your endless list, but to sanctify the spaces already there. What is one small, non-negotiable window of solitude you will schedule for yourself tomorrow? Solitude is the quiet forge where character is tempered and strength is born. This journey along the edge has revealed that isolation is not a void to be feared, but a crucible for transformation. From the shipwrecked sailor who learned to love his fate to the leader who found clarity in a silent room, we have seen how Stoic principles turn loneliness into power. The inner citadel becomes your unbreachable sanctuary. Amor Fati teaches you to embrace even the harshest reality. The dichotomy of control directs your energy inward to the only realm you truly command. Each story is a testament to the profound truth that our greatest challenges can become our most vital teachers. Seneca captured the ultimate reward of this practice when he wrote, "The mind that is untroubled and tranquil is a citadel." A fortress of peace is not built in the crowd, but in the quiet moments you claim for yourself. You now possess the philosophical tools to stop seeing solitude as emptiness and to start cultivating it as your most fertile ground for self-discovery. The edge is not a place of danger, but of perspective. We would love to hear how solitude has shaped your own journey. Share your story in the comments below, and if you are ready to continue building your inner resilience, subscribe for more journeys into Stoic wisdom.